Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Knicks Talk. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the labyrinth that is the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement and how it's going to impact the Knicks' off-season plans. Now, I know what you're thinking. The NBA's financial landscape was already more complicated than trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. But trust me, these new rules are taking things to a whole new level. But fear not, because we're here to break it all down for you. How real is the threat of Isaiah Hartenstein leaving? First on the agenda, let's talk about Isaiah Hartenstein. The Knicks starting center had a breakout year last season, and now he's set to hit unrestricted free agency. The question on everyone's mind is, how much can the Knicks actually offer him? Here's where things get tricky. Because Hartenstein signed a 2-year deal with the Knicks back in 2022, the team only has what's called early bird rights on him. This means they can't just back up the Brinks truck and give him whatever he wants. Instead, they're capped at offering him a starting salary of 175% of what he made last season. So let's do the math. Hartenstein pulled in $9.2 million last year, which means the most the Knicks can offer him for next season is around $16.2 million. Over 4 years, that comes out to a grand total of about $72.5 million. Now, you might be wondering, why does this rule even exist? Well, it's basically to prevent stars from gaming the system. Imagine if LeBron James decided to sign a minimum contract with a team that's already over the salary cap, just so he could turn around and ink a max deal with them a year later. The early bird rule puts a stop to that. Unfortunately for the Knicks, this rule also makes it harder for them to keep a player like Hartenstein, who's clearly outperformed his current contract. Is there a loophole around the early bird rules for Isaiah Hartenstein? But wait, there might be a loophole. If the Knicks can convince Hartenstein to sign a 1-year deal this summer, they'll have his full bird rights next year. That means they could offer him any amount, up to a max contract. Of course, this is a gamble for Hartenstein. If he gets hurt or has a down year, he could be leaving a lot of money on the table. But if he balls out and the Knicks are willing to pay up next summer, he could end up making even more in the long run. Knicks luxury tax implications. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the luxury tax. Knicks fans, brace yourselves, because it's looking like a near certainty that your team is going to be paying the tax next season. The projected tax threshold for the 2024-25 season is $172 million. The Knicks already have $102.5 million committed to just 6 players. That's Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Miles McBride. Now let's say they re-sign Hartenstein for around $16 million, and then give OG Anunoby, who's also a free agent, a cool $35 million. That puts them at $154 million for just 8 players. They'd only have about $18 million left before they hit the tax, and they still need to fill 6 more roster spots. And remember, those numbers for Hartenstein and Anunoby might be on the conservative side. Anunoby, in particular, could command even more on the open market. The Knicks do have a couple of first-round picks in this year's draft, which would add about $5.6 million to the books if they keep both. They could also bring back Jericho Sims on a non-guaranteed minimum deal. But even if they fill out the rest of the roster with minimum contracts, it's hard to see a path where they avoid the tax without taking a step back from the team that just won 50 games. What is the significance of Bojan Bogdanovic's contract? This brings us to the elephant in the room, Bojan Bogdanovic. The Knicks have a big decision to make with Bogdanovic's contract. Bogey is set to make $19 million next season, but only $2 million of that is guaranteed. The Knicks have until June 29th to decide if they want to keep him at that full $19 million or let him walk and only owe him the $2 million. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a straightforward decision about whether Bogdanovic is worth that extra $17 million to the team, but it's actually a lot more complicated than that. See, Bogdanovic's contract could be a valuable trade chip. An expiring deal worth $19 million for a solid veteran could be very attractive to a team looking to shed some long-term salary. So even if the Knicks don't think Bogdanovic is worth that money to them on the court, they might still choose to guarantee his deal just to keep that trade flexibility open. Of course, this is where things get really interesting. Would James Dolan, the Knicks owner, be willing to pay that extra $17 million to Bogdanovic, plus the increased luxury tax bill, just for the possibility of making a trade down the line? It's a tough call, and it really highlights the kind of high-stakes chess match that NBA front offices have to play under this new CBA. Why don't the Knicks just wait until 2025 to trade for a star? Speaking of the new CBA, let's talk about how it's impacting the Knicks' timeline. One of the key changes in the new agreement is that it's going to be a lot harder for teams to build super teams through free agency. The rules are designed to give players more incentive to stay with their current teams, which means if the Knicks have dreams of landing a big-name free agent, this summer might be their best shot before the new rules really kick in. At the same time, they have to be smart about how they navigate the cap and the tax. They don't want to overcommit to role players or take on bad contracts that are going to limit their flexibility down the line. It's a delicate balancing act. On one hand, you have the allure of making a big splash and trying to vault the team into title contention. On the other, you have the long-term health of the franchise to consider. So, what's the right play for the Knicks this summer? Well, if you ask me, I think they need to focus on retaining their own key free agents first and foremost. That means doing what it takes to keep Hartenstein and Anunoby in the fold. After that, I think they should be looking for value in the draft and on the trade market. They have a good young core and a culture that players seem to want to be a part of. They don't need to swing for the fences and mortgage their future for a superstar if the price isn't right. But hey, that's just one man's opinion. I'm sure there are plenty of Knicks fans out there who are ready for the team to go all in and make a big move. First and foremost, let's address the elephant in the room. Why will it be so much more challenging for the Knicks to trade for a star player in 2025 compared to 2024? The answer lies in a key provision of the new CBA called the second apron. Here's a breakdown of how this works. In the upcoming season, the Knicks' payroll is likely to exceed the first apron, which is projected to be around $179 million. While this isn't a significant issue in the short term, problems arise if they venture above the second apron, set at $10 million higher than the first. Teams that find themselves above this second apron face a plethora of new restrictions that can severely hinder their ability to improve their roster. For starters, they are prohibited from signing free agents for more than the minimum salary, effectively eliminating their ability to attract quality players on the open market. Moreover, they lose access to the mid-level exception and any traded player exceptions, further limiting their options. However, the most critical restriction for the Knicks, and the one that could have the biggest impact on their future plans, is that teams above the second apron are not allowed to take in more salary than they send out in a trade. This means that if the Knicks find themselves in this position, they will be unable to package together multiple players to acquire a star with a hefty contract. Given the expected raises for Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle in 2025, it's a very real possibility that the Knicks will be above the second apron when that time comes. As such, if they have any intentions of making a significant move, their best opportunity to do so would be either this summer or during the 2024-25 season, before these new rules come into full effect. What about the extensions of Brunson and Randle? Speaking of Brunson and Randle, let's delve into the details of their potential contract extensions. The math surrounding these deals is relatively straightforward. Brunson, who has 1 year remaining on his current contract, plus a player option for the 2025-26 season, can decline that option and sign an extension worth up to $156 million over 4 new years. While this is undoubtedly a substantial sum, it's worth noting that it's actually less than what he could potentially earn as an unrestricted free agent in 2025. Similarly, Randle can decline his 2025-26 player option and sign an extension worth up to $181.5 million over 4 years. Again, this is a significant amount of money, but it may not necessarily be the maximum he could command on the open market. Of course, the Knicks and these players could always come to an agreement on lesser terms, but these figures represent the upper limits of what's possible under the new CBA. What exceptions? Do the Knicks have to sign players? Now let's shift our focus to the exceptions the Knicks can utilize to acquire players. The most significant of these is the mid-level exception. If the Knicks can manage to keep their payroll below $179 million, they will have access to the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is projected to be around $12.9 million. However, if they exceed that threshold, which is a distinct possibility especially if they retain Bojan Bogdanovic, they will only have the taxpayer mid-level exception at their disposal, which is approximately $5.2 million. One piece of good news is that starting this summer, teams will be allowed to use the mid-level exception in trades, not just to sign free agents. This provides the Knicks with a bit more flexibility in terms of how they can utilize this exception. In addition to the mid-level exception, the Knicks also have a few trade exceptions at their disposal. However, it's important to note that these cannot be combined with each other or with player salaries to bring in a larger contract. What about OG Anunoby's pending free agency? Finally, let's discuss OG Anunoby's impending free agency. The Knicks hold Anunoby's full bird rights, which gives them the ability to offer him a maximum contract worth $42.3 million in the first year and $245.3 million over 5 years. While other teams can offer Anunoby the same starting salary, they are limited to offering a 4-year deal with a total value of $181.9 million. It's worth pointing out that the majority of the difference between these two offers lies in the 5th year, and it's reasonable to assume that Anunoby would be able to secure a new contract for that season regardless. Nevertheless, the Knicks do hold a slight advantage in this regard. Of course, the Knicks and Anunoby could always come to an agreement on a deal that is less than the maximum, but these are the numbers that we're working with under the new CBA. So there you have it. The new collective bargaining agreement is undeniably complex, but understanding its intricacies is crucial for grasping how it will impact the Knicks' decision-making process in the coming years. They will need to be strategic about when they choose to make their moves and how they structure their contracts in order to maximize their chances of success. This brings me to a question for you, the viewers. Do you think the Knicks should be preparing for a major trade this summer before the new rules come into effect? Or would they be better served focusing on re-signing their own players and building through the draft? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm always eager to hear the perspectives of our knowledgeable and passionate Knicks fan base. As always, if you enjoyed this content and found it informative, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analysis of the Knicks and the NBA as a whole. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue to create the content that you love. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Knicks Talk. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and let's go Knicks.